Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, February 20th, 2014. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, Icelandic homebrewers Eyvi and Siggy join us to talk about ramping up brew in a bag, making a low-tech process a bit more high-tech. If you're new to home brewing and would like to get into the hobby for the first time, check out our website, basicbrewing.com, where you can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs to walk you through basic and more advanced brewing techniques. You can find me on Twitter. I'm Basic Brewing, all one word. On Facebook, I'm facebook.com/basicbrewing.james, and our show page on Facebook is at facebook.com/basicbrewing. We're on Google Plus, too. And thanks again to everybody clicking on the Amazon.com associate link on our basicbrewing.com site. You know the drill. Whenever you have the itch to shop on Amazon, go to basicbrewing.com first. Click on the Amazon link. That will take you to Amazon.com, and we will get a commission off of stuff you buy. The good news is that you'll be supporting the podcast without paying any extra to Amazon. We also have associate links for Brew Your Own Magazine and the American Homebrewers Association on our site as well. You can find our Basic Brewing iPhone app on iTunes and our Android app on Amazon.com. We're on the BlackBerry podcast directory, and we're on the Stitcher app, and we're on the Windows Phone directory, too. Check out our brewer's logbook at basicbrewingshop.com. In the front is a blank calendar that you can use to track your fermentations and plan your brews, and there is room in the back to log the details of up to 50 batches of beer. If you want to put a tip in our tip jar, some coinage in our guitar case, you can go to basicbrewing.com/support. Thanks to everybody who has done so already. Protect your precious beer with one of our growler bags. Check those out at basicbrewingshop.com. It's warmed up here in Northwest Arkansas. Steve Wilkes and I celebrated by posting a new episode of Basic Brewing Video this week. In this week's show, we talk a bit about kegging and dissect a corny keg. And there's some conversation out there. Steve asked the question whether it matters whether your dip tube is curved or not. Insert your own joke here. And there's been some discussion on the YouTube page as to whether it does matter or not. I would check it out myself, but my kegs are full, so I can't look in there and try one dip tube and the other. If you'll remember last week, we get an email from Troy in Atlanta who was worried that his power would go out thanks to an ice storm, and his fermenter would get so cold that it would put his yeast to sleep in his big old beer. Well, I heard back from Troy, and the power luckily did not go out, but his fermenter temperature did drop to 60 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 15 C or thereabouts. But Troy says that a gravity reading says everything looked okay. In the meantime, Derek from Colorado wrote with this advice. He says, Troy shouldn't be too worried about the temperature dropping much. The beer should be active and creating its own heat. Derek advises to wrap the fermenter with a blanket, and it should stay plenty warm in the fridge. In Colorado, we run into these issues all the time. Derek says, I had two friends that went into their garages to bottle beer for a competition last week, and their beer was frozen. When life gives you frozen beer, make ice beer. Of course, there's debate now on whether that's legal or not. The window for registering for the National Homebrew Conference in June in Grand Rapids is open. The application window is February 19th through February 26th. It's a new system, a new way of doing things that's supposed to be less stressful. And that, we don't have to all try to go at once and register. So hope that works out better this year. Of course, I've got an in since I'm a presenter. But you can find out all the details on how you can go at ahaconference.org. And I hope that we see everybody there. Also from the AHA, the election is going for members of the American Homebrewers Association Governing Committee. That election is going on until March 31st. If you're an AHA member, you can find out about the candidates and vote by going to the membership tab on homebrewersassociation.org. Now, we talked to Eyvi and Siggy a good long time, so let's go right to our conversation. Go to Iceland and talk about ways they're making brew in a bag a bit more high-tech. Well, Avi and Siggy, welcome to Basic Brewing Radio.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Why don't you guys, since I can't wrap my Arkansas tongue around your the proper pronunciations of your names, why don't you guys introduce yourselves? That way, it accomplishes two things. We will know how to pronounce your names properly, and everybody will know who's talking.
All right. I'm Eyvindur Karlsson, or you can call me Eyvi.
And I'm Sigurdur Gudbrandsson, and you can call me Siggy.
There you go. Thank goodness for that, because you guys have a distinct advantage because you speak English better than I do, so it's not fair.
Lots of training.
We can teach you to pronounce Eyjafjallajökull later, and then you'll be fine.
As long as I know what it means.
It's the volcano that sent everything down.
That grounded the plains.
That's right. Okay. Yeah, now I remember. Well, we have to say that this isn't our first conversation. We had a conversation for your podcast a few days ago with Chris Colby, and we were talking about winter warmers, and I posted a link to that on Facebook. But in the beginning of that was in Icelandic, and the ending was, but then in the middle part, Americans or Americans, people who speak English. Oh, I'm going to get in trouble.
People from foreign parts.
Yeah, I'm in trouble enough already for not using metric enough. So now I'm geocentric. But anyway, how would people find that episode of your podcast?
Well, actually, we just opened up a podcasting website here in Iceland, which you can visit, which is called podcast.is. And you can find that episode. It's called Gervarpið, or Yeastcast, I guess in English.
Fermentcasts, maybe.
Fermentcast, yeah. I'll post I'll create a short link to that episode where we can call it podcast.is/winter warmer.
There you go.
Yeah.
Easy enough.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, good. Yeah, it was a fun conversation, and it was good to talk to you guys. And during that conversation, it came up that brew in a bag is very popular over in Iceland, and it came out also that you had been working on a high-tech brew in a bag system, which to me is an oxymoron. Brew in a bag is meant to be simple, and you can't leave well enough alone. You gotta pump it up a bit.
Yeah.
But let us in, first of all, Avi, you and I kind of go back a while when I think you were emailing me several years ago, and you were pining that you were about the only home brewer in Iceland. But the things have improved since then. What's the state of the nation over there as far as home brewing is concerned?
Yeah, it's going great now. I think at the time there were probably 5 of us who were the only home brewer in Iceland, but now we have a homebrew club, and I'm actually president, and there's registered people who pay the fee every year. This year we have about 50
full members,
full-time members, and then we have a bunch of people on our website who are participating in our on our forum, and
lurkers that are basically they are there, and they're enjoying and contributing, but not they have they're still working up towards paying the dues.
Yeah, and we host monthly meetings where we meet at a bar that lets us use a back room where we can bring our own home brews and sample and chat, and that's sometimes we get 10 people, sometimes we get 20. It depends. But we also have a homebrew competition. I think we have. It's coming up on the 5th time that we do it.
Fourth or fifth. Yeah,
and that's growing every year. I think last year we had to turn a bunch of submissions away because it was just getting too big, and I think
which is funny in retrospect. For the first year, I remember I had like 5 beers just to try to fill in.
Because there were like 4 of us at that time, but now so everybody won. No, but we had 2 categories that year. We have 3 now. So
is one of them whale related beers or whale? Using whale as an ingredient.
It's a special category this year. we do low gravity beers, lower gravity beers, and high gravity beers, and a special category every year. So last year it was IPAs was a special category, and this year it's porters and stouts.
So yeah.
Well, so it's grown since I think I wrote to you in 2008 or 9, probably 2008,
and we've got I've spoken to one of the main retailer for grains and homebrew supplies here in Iceland, and there are a lot of brewers that are out there that they just lurk, they read, they buy the stuff, and they don't make themselves known. One of them is actually my nephew.
We should point out that it is actually illegal here, so maybe that might be a part of the reason why some people don't want to.
Well, it's only illegal if you manage to miss the 2.20.
Well, yeah, we can make it up to 2.25% ABV. So obviously nobody ever brews anything above 2.25%,
except when we make mistakes.
Well, sometimes
it's unfortunate,
Whoops. I lost the hydrometer on that one. I'm not sure what the ABV is on that.
My scale wasn't working. It might have been too much grains in there. I don't know.
Plus minus 50 points,
Well, it sounds like you've got a good thing going over there. And why?
Yeah.
And why is you say brew in a bag is really popular? Why? Why is brew in a bag popular? Is it because everybody has kind of come to the party late, and that brew in a bag is kind of the latest thing?
I guess that it's a couple of factors. There's one factor that you have to weigh in, that we are really isolated as an island. So everything we buy at like extreme prices. So whenever you buy, a grain mill that's going to cost you $100 or $150, it's going to cost me $300. When you buy, a pump that's $120 or something, I have to buy it at $350. So when we factor in the price for brewing pots and all the equipment that we need, it simply wasn't economical to start brewing.
And also the traditional 3-vessel systems, or traditional quote unquote, where you use a cooler.
Mm-hmm.
Coolers are not as readily available over here. Because it's cold.
It's cool outside.
It's freaking cold, man.
No, I mean, we use it, but I mean, they're going to be expensive, and also it's when you're searching. I've found over here when you're searching for a cooler, it's hard to find that one that's not electric, and that's not going to do any good. So I found when I first started, because I started out using a 3-vessel system, but I couldn't find. Well, first of all, I started in the winter, and it's just not possible to get a cooler in the winter. But even during the summer, it was hard to find a proper cooler. So I actually started out using just a bucket for my mash tun that I wrapped in a sleeping bag.
Instead of coolers over there, you have warmers.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, then there also there were a lot of factors that countered into this being one of the main methods that ended up dominating the
Sphere, not the spear.
Dominating the country.
The dominating spear.
There wasn't really any innovation because there wasn't like any forum where people were discussing. So discussing brewing.
And there wasn't
things.
a tradition, of course.
Yeah. All the documents, all the stuff that we were able to read and learn from was most of it was from America, and at the time, there was like it was generally just the traditional 3-vessel system, or else you're a nutter. So I guess many of us started in the traditional 3-vessel system, but once we found methods to bring down the price, I think that things started to explode, as well as the increase in price in just beer. So that always sparks the.
And I mean, I think really the start was there were a few of us who were chatting online at that point, and I think it was when you covered Brew in a Bag on Basic Brewing Radio, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I already had a 3-vessel system at that point, but I posted it and I said, this is really interesting. And I think Siggy over here sort of ran with it. And I think you were the first one to explore it over here.
Yeah. I did a lot of hustle. I did a lot of investigating on where to find the proper bag material and everything around that. And once I got that, I made my bag and went to meetings, and I was pretty much selling the idea to everybody else.
And then there's a guy who was really the first sort of. Originally, we had to buy supplies from a brewery, and then this guy in the club started to import ingredients and things. And he started selling these makeshift buckets with electric heating elements in them that were designed for as a brew in a bag, just as a starter kit, and they were really affordable. So I think that's what got a lot of people. A lot of people that are starting out will go to him and they'll buy that starting kit.
Yeah, so he was also instrumental, like when he used the plastic bucket, the bucket of death that was imported here. I think I saw one guy who posted something, and I took a look at it. I did my own design, and I tried to get other people to use it, and other people started doing it, and it just went bananas. And at that point, it was suddenly affordable to do all grain brewing.
So what kind of plastic bucket? I mean, we're not talking the I'm not thinking we're talking about the thin-walled fermentation buckets that we use.
Yeah, we
are. Actually, you can use that. Yeah, some of the people.
Kind of
yeah, some use that. I use a larger bucket. I use a half-barrel bucket, which I've been using since.
But the ones that they use for the starter kits, that's just a fermentation bucket.
Fermentation bucket. Yeah.
And that's used just for mashing. You can't boil in that, can you?
Yeah.
Mashing, but it's the 1-vessel system.
Yeah.
Really? I would think that. Of course, I'm thinking back in my time in a fast food restaurant where they had a plastic pickle bucket, and they drained hot fryer grease into it, and it kind of dissolved all over the floor. So
that's slightly warmer, probably.
Yeah, well, you have to think about the temperature. 100 degrees Celsius is 220 F, so the grease was
212,
what?
Right?
Yeah, 212.
Yeah. And when you've got a warm grease,
It's like 400 degrees, right?
Yeah, 400 or something.
Yeah, they were basically idiots. They didn't wait for the oil to they shouldn't have been doing it in the first place. But then they didn't wait long enough for the oil, the grease to cool down, and they got in trouble for it. But so you can boil.
Sounds like that scene from the new Hobbit movie, where the molten gold.
Oh yeah.
Floats all over the place.
Yeah. This is less glamorous than the.
Oh yeah.
used fry grease is used fry oil is less glamorous than molten gold. But so you can boil in one of these plastic buckets then. Well, there you go.
And if somebody's wondering about off flavors, there are none. I've brewed like my system, which I still use my plastic bucket, the same one that I designed years ago. And I've been brewing and brewing and brewing with my kettle elements and my plastic bucket. I've gone through batches and batches, and I decide when I make a clean lager, it's clean. When I want to do something crazy, with all the flavors,
Those are high density elements as well, which some people say can lead to off flavors. But you should point out that you do clean your elements very well, and if you don't do that, then it
will ruin the beer if you don't clean the elements
then
between
the
batches.
residue will stick to it and burn, and that'll be bad.
So I'm assuming that you want to use. And just to catch up people who, I'm sure everybody knows what brew in a bag is, but as soon as I assume that, then there will be people who say, wait a minute, I don't. So brew in a bag is essentially, instead of using a mash tun, you take a nylon mesh bag and put it in a kettle traditionally, and you some people use all of the water in the brewing process in the kettle, mash the grains in the bag, and at the end of the mash rest time, you just take the bag out. And some people choose to sparge. Other people just do like a no sparge method. So I'm assuming that you got to keep the nylon bag away from the heating element.
Well, yeah.
If you apply direct heat. But most of the people who use those simple starter kits, they just heat up the water, then they put the bag in and they mash and they wrap something around it or whatever, and they just turn the elements off.
Yeah.
So then it doesn't matter if the elements are off, then you're fine.
Yeah. Well, what I do is when I need to heat up the mash to a mash out temperature, I'm just playing the dunk game for like 10 minutes. So I turn the elements on fully, and I'm just dunking the bag,
so they don't
stick like to the burn. I actually had I had one accident one time. Forgot myself doing something else slightly for a couple of minutes, and actually accidentally burnt the bag, but I had to filter the grains out of the mash, basically, when the mash was over. I didn't clean the elements until after the brew, and I made the beer, and it tasted all right.
So when you look at stepping up into an advanced or a high-tech brew in a bag system, what are we adding?
Well, I have pretty much a simple system for myself. Eyvi has a much more advanced system. For instance, we've gone through a number of iterations.
Siggy helped me there should be a disclaimer. You should not attempt to do this if you don't know what you're doing.
Oh yeah,
because
yeah.
you will kill yourself.
Oh yeah,
Seriously.
There's like seriously,
yeah,
if you don't know your electricity, don't do this. Find somebody that likes electrics, give him a beer, and get him to help you.
Electricity and water don't mix well.
Nor do electricity and stainless steel.
Yeah.
So it's just if you want to stay alive. So Siki has because I don't know anything about electricity, but I knew what I wanted, so I could like draw a picture and say, "Can you help me make this?" And I will give you a beer. And he said yes. So that's how that happened. And the original design came from I'm sure a lot of people have seen the Brewmeister. That's like a standalone. It's basically a brew in a bag system.
Yeah,
right. It's just like a bucket within a pot.
Yeah, we've done a show on that a couple of years ago. I think when we were talking to our friend Jan in Norway, he's the brewer who came up with the recipe for Two Captains, which is a famous double IPA from there. But you're right. It's essentially the Brewmeister system is essentially a brew in a bag system. Only instead of a bag, they use a kind of like a metal colander inside the kettle.
Yeah, exactly. And there were a bunch of guys over here, or a couple of guys, who were trying to design a clone of the Brewmeister. And I think there are actually a couple of guys who own Brewmeisters over here, but some guys wanted to, guys who love to build things wanted to make a clone, and eventually, and they tried a bunch of different ways to get like a vessel within a vessel, and eventually they just settled on using brew in a bag, and that's really where I got my design, and there are a lot of people copying that design over here right now,
which is fantastic because it's always fun to see the so-called brew porn.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun.
Well, and that's how developments happen. Is someone takes your design and improves it, and then the next person takes that design and improves it, and pretty soon you've got something that's a few leaps away from where it started.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, it was just I was already doing brew in a bag at that point, I think, but I'd been doing 3-vessel and some brew in a bag, and I was just I was never happy with my accuracy as far as temperature goes. So I really wanted something that I could dial in the same method and the same temperature time and time again for repeatability and that whole thing. Yeah, so that's really why I wanted. It was not. Well, I mean, a part of it was what I call gas, gear acquisition syndrome. but it was really, it was just to make it easier to do the same thing over and over again.
So, what new components did you add?
Well, when I finally got around to, because I had a different system, I just started from scratch. So I got a stainless steel kettle, which I didn't have before. It's a 72-liter kettle, which is, I guess, 15. No,
yeah, close to like what's 10 gallons? That's
40 liters. So this 40, it's 15 gallons.
15 gallons. 15 to 18.
Yeah,
or something?
Somewhere in that vicinity, I guess. And I got a pump and a temperature controller,
which is
and of course
PID
PID temperature controller and a 5.5 kilowatt heating element,
which is ultra low density.
Yeah, like a water heater element.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's pretty much my entire system and the bag.
Yeah, and if except you're forgetting
the false bottom.
Yeah.
I needed a good false bottom so that I can actually fire the element with the bag in the kettle.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so it works. It works in the following manner. So he heats up his water puts the false bottom in and the grain bag, throws the grains in, and sets the PID already is configured to keep the temperature consistent to whatever he configured it to. So he just turns on his pump, and it will recirculate. It will pull the warmer wort from under the grains, and it will move the wort to on top of the grains through a pipe or a tube, and thus it will be recirculating. So it's a RMS, recirculating mash system, but it's
where is the temperature sensor in the kettle?
That's the one thing I've been struggling with that I'm actually redesigning now, because at first I put it in a tube that was goes through the lid and into the middle of the mash. But I find that even though a PID controller will sort of educate itself to deal with the heat fluctuations, it still wasn't responding fast enough. So I'm actually moving it to the middle of the line,
basically
so
basically in line. So the PID controller will be measuring the
moving wort, in the tube,
the warmest part.
Yeah,
that's interesting. And so, what are the advantages that you see of doing it this way?
Well, it's very accurate, and I can just dial in. You know, if I overshoot, well, I try never to overshoot, because that can take a while to bring down. But if I miss it, if I'm slightly under my mash temperature,
and if you want to
it'll just take a couple of minutes to bring it back up. And also when if I want to do a step mash, that's very easy. Or when I want to do a mash out, that's also very easy. And so I get those benefits, and it's still just as quick and easy as a regular brew in a bag.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very fast. Cleanup is minimal. So those are the
one vessel.
One vessel, yeah. Although, I actually do tend to sparge now, because I find it's not so much to get more efficiency, but I just find that my efficiency is more predictable when I sparge. So yeah, but that's the just for instance, I bottled four batches of beer in a row where I had a very, very similar mash temperature, and they all finished at 10, 12. Every single, all four of them had the same final gravity.
So one thing we're challenged with home brewing is consistency, and it sounds like if you can use this system to maintain your mash temperature, since your brew pod is not insulated, that's one disadvantage to brew in a bag.
Yeah, but I mean, my brew pod is so big that I have before I had my PID controller, I had a different kind of temperature controller that didn't really work to maintain the temperature, but I could use it to bring it up to the desired temperature. And I tried for a couple of brews. I just tried, mashing and just leaving it. I didn't put anything over the kettle or anything, but the mash has such a huge mass. Those were 10-gallon batches, and obviously I brew indoors, so it was warm, and it didn't drop at all really during the mash.
But regarding the insulation thing, my pot is actually insulated. I've got a plastic bucket, and I found that I was battling with because I have two pieces of 2 kilowatt elements, and I didn't like how the boil was going, I found it to be, a bit too little. So I decided to insulate my pot with a
Rock wool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
rock wool, and I put a thin layer of rock wool around it. Put some aluminum foil outside of that, taped it all together, and now my mashes are like rock stable. And and if I want to boil that, it boils more easily. I get more efficiency energy wise.
Now,
you can insulate this.
What was the insulation again?
Rock wool.
Rock wool, but I guess you can use like glass wool if you're up for that. But rock wool is very common here in Iceland, so.
It's like would we call that steel wool or what?
No. The stuff the insulation that you put inside your wall.
Oh, just the fiberglass insulation, the pink stuff.
No, yeah.
Oh,
no,
actually,
not that.
No.
You could use that, but the mineral one, the green one.
Yeah, it's
pretty sure it's called rock wool.
Yeah, it's called rock wool. It's not popular around the world actually.
No,
as far as I know.
But it's pretty much the same as the fiberglass one, but it doesn't use glass, but it uses
it's less itchy. It's it's more stable.
It is itchy though. But
it's very popular due to we have an abundance of rocks and we have an abundance of cold. So we founded some system.
Yeah, it's actually funny. He's been describing his system, and mine is like shiny and has a temperature control, and his is like the ghetto system. He put mine together.
Yeah. I love putting advanced systems together. Actually, a common friend of ours, he's asked me to put his system together as well, which I'm going to do hopefully soon. But I love my ghetto system. I don't know why. It's a bucket of death, and people have said that I'm crazy for doing it, but I love it.
Well, it's like the doctor who was always sick, or like why Elvis Presley had a broken heart.
Yeah. And you always go to the barber that's got the worst haircut. So if there's a barber shop and there's more than one barber, you go to the one with the worst haircut. So Well, that sounds like I'm intrigued now. Our friends over in Tulsa at High Gravity, they do an electric brew in a bag system, and there's a video on their website that they use. In addition to the bag, I think they've got a kind of a colander inside, a metal colander inside, so it's kind of a step up, maybe from your design. But they have an electric controller there, maybe similar to what you're using. But if you wanted to take it a step further, we've got a lot of people who listen to the podcast who are very familiar with the controlling devices and how to build them and how to program them. How could you take it to the next step?
Well, you could go for automation. That would be the next step, where you could use something like Arduino or Raspberry Pi or some programmable computer.
Yeah, they're popping up all over.
Yeah, and you can even. I mean, there are even ready-made like brewing computers that you can buy. Like there's one called, I think it's called
there's Brew Firm, I think.
Yeah,
Brew Troller.
Brew Troller is one. And usually, then those are usually Arduino based.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know, Arduino is like open source hardware controllers. For those, I don't even understand what I just said, but it's apparently.
And you can actually the systems today are getting more and more powerful and more compact. So, like right now, you've got the Raspberry Pi, which is basically a PC on a stamp essentially. You can also buy like quad-core Android systems that have like inputs and outputs, and for like the difference between Raspberry Pi and our Android is minimal. Raspberry Pi is just the hardware platform. Android is just a operating system that runs on specific hardware.
So so you could take one of those and you could put together a system where, I mean, you can automate anything you want, really. It just depends on where you want to go with it. I mean, you can do something where you can automate the mash. So if you want, so you can have a mash. You can program different mash profiles into the thing, and then you can just so for this beer, I want this particular mash profile, and you can click go, and it'll. If that's a step mash, then it'll just go through those steps.
It's interesting. You, in your kind of isolated pocket over there, are coming up with solutions. Kind of like the animals in Australia, how they came about because they were isolated, and nature found different solutions for things that were happening over there. You guys are finding different solutions for the conditions that you're working with up there, and you're coming up with interesting takes on brewing that maybe others hadn't thought of.
Yeah, and also, I mean, one aspect of it as well that I think we probably forgot to mention earlier is that whereas you guys use gas primarily, we tend to use almost exclusively electricity.
Yeah, gas is expensive here.
Yeah, gas is expensive, and
electricity is cheap.
Electricity is very cheap, and those big burners aren't available, and also brewing outdoors is not viable always. And when it comes to electricity, it's hard to get a burner that'll do the trick because you just don't get the power from a regular stove to. Right. To brew a big batch of beer.
Yeah.
So the heating elements are really the best way to go because you can get the most power into the wort that way.
Really cheaply.
Yeah, really cheaply.
That's the main thing. You have to be able to buy it. I've been taking a look at 5 kilowatt induction heaters. But those things are going to drain my pocket if I buy one.
Yeah.
So,
but the 5 kilowatt heating elements are very cheap.
Yeah.
So,
very good.
So yeah, that's definitely a factor.
Is there anything else? Any other warnings besides get someone who knows what they're doing to wire up your system? Anything that you would have done differently if you had to do it all over again?
Well, if you're going to do it, just do it properly. Because my first attempts at creating a temp control system were sort of, I was trying to go do it cheaply and, just use what I had, and it didn't really work.
Well, if you're going to do it really cheaply, expect a lot of maintenance. You have there are a couple of devices that are worth investing in. They're not that expensive. A PID controller, you can buy that at eBay for it's relatively cheap. Also, with the solid state relay, you can buy that with a heatsink. That's also very cheap on eBay. They'll send you direct from China or Hong Kong.
That's one of the components that I guess we forgot to mention. But that you need a relay to control the current.
Yeah, and it's also very good to if you're gonna go into the system, if you're gonna make one, if you're gonna use a PID controller, you have to get a solid state relay, and you have to make sure that either the heatsink is so freaking huge and effective that it's going to take all the heat away. If you go with the stock heatsink, make sure that you are using a fan that will move the air and remove the heat from the heatsink.
If it gets too hot, it's gonna melt.
It's actually going to lock in, and it's going to be constantly on, so it's not turning itself off, and making sure the temperature is
steady. Because that happened to me with my old temperature controller, because I didn't invest. That was one of the things that happened, because I cheaped out, because I had a cheaper temperature controller and a cheaper relay. I was brewing, and I wasn't really thinking this was like my third or fourth brew using the system, and I was sort of comfortable with it, and I figured, it's fine. And so I have an office in my garage as well as a brewery, and they're separated by a wall. So I was just working while my mash was going on, and then it stopped turning itself off, and so my mash started boiling.
Oh no!
And so that was not good. So that's my it's just you get a good, get a proper kettle if you're gonna go with the if you're gonna go with the temp control and everything anyway. You know,
shell out for the solid state relay.
And a nice big heat sink, and and obviously and if you have a person that knows something, you know that you're gonna have to either plug it into the outlet that your stove plugs into, or something. You're probably going to need a bigger outlet.
Yeah.
And but apart from that, just you can cheap out on some things, but when it comes to the kettle itself, and when it comes to the temp controller and the relay, like the electric components, you want to make sure that those are proper. I mean, my pump, for instance, was cheap, and it's just a very small. It's not the March pumps that a lot of homebrewers in the States use. It's not one of those. It's just solar. It's meant to be solar powered. It's designed for water systems in solar powered houses.
Yeah, it's 12 volts. You can buy a compatible one. I saw two compatible ones on Amazon. And you can buy it in the States if you're in the States. Otherwise, you can buy it anywhere. And it's 12 volts. It pumps like 1 or 2 gallons a minute.
Yeah, I think it's 2 for my size. They have different sizes. So it's
it works. It works in 212 Fahrenheit. So
it's food grade and everything. So that's fine. But it's not. It doesn't have the output that the March pumps do. But I didn't feel like I needed that. So
right.
So that's where I saved. But
because you're saying that your mash temperature is fairly stable to begin with, so you don't need a whole lot of throughput through the pump to keep it that way.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess I'm not sure if the speed will the output of the pump is going to matter that much for the temperature control, because it's
stable.
Yeah, because it is stable, and the heating element's keeping it stable anyway, and it's pumped directly from the elements and back up on top. So if it's 1 gallon a minute or 5 gallons a minute, I don't think that's going to matter all that much. At least it's fine over here, and this is the pump that most people over here use. It's working very well.
Yeah, I have actually one extra horror story for all of you thinking about doing the.
You saved the best for last.
Oh yes. Well, we had one case where the fire department actually had to put out a garage. So the story behind that is that there was this guy that had a system, basically submergible elements, the types that we use, and all of his systems, all of the electrics were connected to one extension cord with a multiple output that had a button on it, and
like an off switch.
And if you press on, it's going to turn everything on, and if it's running on dry, if the elements aren't submerged, they're going to burn. And so I think it was his sister or somebody closely related to him that went into the garage, accidentally hit the button, and then went out of the garage. And so the elements, they caught fire, of course, burnt down the garage, and so that's
Burn it down.
So yeah, that is the one horror story that I know of here.
That guy needs a brew hauler, James.
Yeah.
He has to send in the story himself.
Yeah.
Well, I guess.
Well, that may be a caution. Unplug the thing when you're not using it.
And
Unplug everything.
Don't make it so somebody could like trip over something and accidentally turn it on.
Or don't put it to where if you trip over the cable, it's going to knock the kettle over either.
Yeah.
And there are actually systems that you can if you wanted to make it extra safe, and if you had the know-how, you could put in a fail-safe that would make it impossible to turn the element on unless it was submerged.
Right.
So you could just put a sensor at that level in the pot, so that if there's no water at the level of the sensor,
assuming the sensor isn't broken as well.
Assuming it's broken, yes.
Murphy works in mysterious ways.
Yes.
He's over there too, huh?
Yeah. We're best buddies.
And that's why, as well, also, you want to design your system, even though this is sort of advanced, you're going to want to keep it simple, because the more complicated you make it, the more stuff can go wrong.
Yeah,
that's true.
So that's
well, guys, this has been a lot of fun, and just when I thought I'd learned all there needed to be learned about brewing a bag, you've added another element, so to speak.
Yeah.
I see what you did there.
I was very punny.
Well, Avi and Siggy, I appreciate it very much, and I hope we get the chance to talk again.
Fantastic. It was nice to speak with you.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again to Avi and Siggy. I'll post a link to a YouTube video showing Avi's system on our Facebook page. And I'll also put a link to that video in the description of this episode on basicbrewingvideo.com if you're listening in the future. Also next week, I'll ask toxicologist Paul what he thinks of boiling wort in a plastic bucket. That's in our third installment of Homebrew Toxicology. So you want to be tuning in for that. Lots of good stuff. From toxicologist Paul again. In the meantime, if you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to James at basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com, and please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Our Basic Brewing growler bags are still available in our shop. Protect your precious homebrew and craft beers. You take it from place to place. Check out our support link where you can throw a couple of bucks into the tip jar by subscribing financially to our podcasts. And if you do, I'll send you a link to the bonus episode from last year that only went to our financial supporters and people who have our app. Be sure to check out our DVDs, Extract Brewing and Partial Mashing, Stepping into All Grain, Low-Tech Lagering and Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kits. You can find them all on our site, along with combo deals to save you a few bucks if you want to buy more than one DVD at a time. And you can find our Basic Brewing shirts in the store as well. Our brewers' logbooks are there too. Keep track of up to 50 batches of beer. You can see a fine listing of the fine folks across the country who sell our DVDs on basicbrewing.com. And if there isn't a vendor in your area, you can order them online at our online shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. We appreciate the support there. Our featured products this week that were purchased through the link are Ella's Kitchen Organic Nibbly Fingers 4-flavor variety pack. Nibbly Fingers. And Circulon Contempo 2-quart enamel whistling tea kettle. Thanks again, everybody. And remember, I can't tell who bought what, so no worries there. Just click on the Amazon.com logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping, and we greatly appreciate your support. Don't forget, you can also join the American Homebrewers Association and subscribe to Brew Your Own magazine through the associate links on basicbrewing.com. That's all until next week. Till then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by our buddy Kelly Dotson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.